Hi everyone. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about relationships because for us this was a really kind of fundamental part of our kind of recovery process. And while we have a fantastic relationship now, it certainly wasn't always like that. There were plenty of kind of slamming doors, screaming matches, all that kind of stuff that was kind of contributed to quite a volatile relationship.
Absolutely.
While I had my eating disorder, and that's really quite normal. I think we just kind of want to say that from the outset, that having that kind of turbulent relationship with whoever it is that's involved is really normal, because having an eating disorder or going through any kind of significant challenges like that, it's of course it's going to test relationships, because it's a really tough thing to go through.
It really is. And when you were saying that, it's like there's so much of that it's because we're frightened. There's fear, and certainly on both sides. When B was struggling with an eating disorder, I was going through so much as well. That as a mum, absolutely terrified of what was happening, and actually, treading on eggshells and pussyfooting around, and just I had my own thinking about it, trying to process it for myself as well as trying to support and help B. And when, it's like when a door is slammed in your face, it kind of does throw you into a turmoil of, well, what did I do wrong there? And, I don't know what to do next. And I think what was so hard for us is that prior to that, we'd had an amazing relationship, when B was little, and even in kind of early teens, pre-teen, early teen, we'd always been very close. So suddenly it literally was like a door being slammed in my face. And relationships are so important, fundamental to us being humans. And we've written that one of the sections in our book is on relationships. And we just, as B said, felt it was important to actually spend a little time in a video actually giving our experiences of what we've learned about the importance of relationships and how it worked, etc. Really. So,
and for me, I really withdrew from a lot of my relationships that I had during that time. So whether it was kind of with social groups at school, I was spending most of my time in the nurse's office at school, eating my lunch at break times, or obviously I was in class during the day, and then wouldn't really do much other than kind of come home at the end of the day. When I was going through it, I had to stop playing sport, which was really, really hard for me because I'm a very kind of active person. So that meant that kind of whole social aspect was kind of missing as well. But it very much felt like it was kind of me and mum at the centre of that kind of battle with the eating disorder. There were obviously so many people around us who were supporting. There was the kind of the team of doctors and therapists and counsellors, but also our hugely supportive family, my two brothers, my dad, my grandparents, aunties, uncles. Everyone was there to support us, but at the kind of core of it, it very much felt like that we had this kind of very intense relationship, which is why it kind of felt so volatile, because it was I don't know, it just felt so intense, didn't it?
It's extraordinary now thinking about it, because it felt like we were both in a tunnel somehow, and where everything is blurred around us, because it really did feel like it was just you and me. And also the as B was saying, that with all the people that were surrounding us, from the family, they were doing the best that they could, but had absolutely no idea what it was like to be either B or me. And with we always coming from a place of love, but it was like the things they were frustrated. They didn't understand. They just wanted B to be better. They wanted B back, as did we all. But it was just so frustrating, because I was having to support them as well in their just didn't understand, in their misunderstanding, really, I think, of what it was and what was the best thing to do about it. So there was this just the heaviness of actually wading through mud. Actually, it felt like. And yes, it does. I mean, it feels like another world now. But totally, even just talking about it now, going back there, I can feel how tough it was. And I think so. One of the things. So we deciding what we wanted to share really, and what would be helpful for you. So there were a couple of things that I think are really important that stand out for me as a carer. Is this idea of unconditional love, which as a parent we do naturally anyway. I feel it's what we do, and it felt even more important in this with the illness going through, that I needed to make the distinction between B, my daughter, who I loved unconditionally, and what she was going through. So the eating disorder was a set of behaviours. It wasn't who she was. And I think I was really fortunate, because at the time I was training to be a coach, and this was one of the things that we used to cover. And it really, really helped me to be able to separate out the behaviours. So I was able to tackle and speak to the eating disorder, knowing that it wasn't who she was. And I think, I know that we've spoken briefly about that in the past, but I know that you've said that knowing that I loved you unconditionally was really helpful in all of this.
Yeah, hugely. And I think there was never, despite all the that kind of surface level conflict and kind of trauma that we were going through, there was never really any doubt in my mind the kind of mum's motives, I guess, behind that. And I talk a lot in the book and in other things we've done about how I felt that mum was kind of the prison guard almost, who was having to administer my meals and weigh everything out and make sure that I was kind of on track with those kind of strict guidelines that had been given to me. And I really resented her for it hugely on a day-to-day basis. Really, really resented the fact that you had to do it, but also the fact that I felt like you were kind of on the doctor's side rather than on my side. But I never, even though kind of on that kind of surface level, I found it really hard and really didn't like it, I never doubted that you were doing it because you wanted me to get better and not because you love me. Yeah. Which I think is so important, because feeling, I mean, we all want to feel loved, but I think particularly when you're going through something so tough and traumatic, even if it's hard to see sometimes, it's always, you can kind of feel it underlying everything. So I think that was really important. And then another thing we've kind of talked about is about not seeing the person who has the eating disorder as broken and thinking that they need fixing. And that might seem a bit odd, because the eating disorder is something that ultimately we're trying to get rid of and we're trying to overcome. But what I always say is that the eating disorder is something that you're going through. It's not who you are. And again, that kind of goes back to what Mum was just saying. But if it's something that you're going through, then it's not kind of attached to you. It's not a part of you that is fundamentally broken. It's not like you've got a broken leg that needs to be put in a cast and then biology will fix it. It's not like that at all. So I think as someone who had an eating disorder, being seen as not broken is so powerful. It's so powerful, because I think a lot of the time, not necessarily from you, but from maybe the doctors and the psychotherapists, it's not necessarily kind of explicitly said, yes, you're broken, you need fixing, but no one told me that I wasn't. So there was almost the kind of assumption that because I was having to go to all of these sessions and had all these specialists and medical professionals around me, that I kind of internalised that and thought, oh gosh, well, yeah, there must be something fundamentally wrong with me. But that's not it at all. And I think there's so much power in, particularly for the people who are caring for those with eating disorders, but also like me as someone who had one, just seeing that for myself, that and really believing it, that I am not, and I never was broken, because that also kind of just takes the pressure off a bit, because it's like, okay, well, what do I need to do to fix myself or fix the other person?
Yeah. And I think that this is so important, so important, is being able to separate out, who they are, who they really are, and it's absolutely not what you're going through. That's an experience. And one of the things that I like to talk about, and I've written a blog about this as well. It's, do you see their health? Now that might sound really crazy, even me saying that to you right now, because it's like, but don't you know? Haven't you seen what they look like? Haven't you seen what's going on? But actually what I'm saying, and as Bea has talked about it, the surface level stuff is what's going on with the eating disorder. But actually who they are is beyond that. And that, as Bea has said, doesn't need fixing. Okay, that's the fundamental bit of who we are. And you'll see it. It's like, I know the times that I heard Bea laughing on the phone with a friend, or in the living room watching films with her brothers, when there was laughter, when we were out walking the dog, when we were walking by the sea, that in those moments there was no eating disorder. Okay, because it might feel like it's 24/7, but there are always going to be moments when, Bea used to do a lot of art, and it was like in those moments where she was lost in a drawing, for example, there's no eating disorder there. And that's what we point to, is the health that's always there, that's unshakable, that's just, is that bit that life's got us in that way. And I think that if you can begin to see that in your loved one or in yourself, then I think that's really a really good place to start.
And I think when we talk about relationships, this is as much about the relationship you have with yourself as it is with those around you. Often when we talk about relationships, it's about kind of with a partner or a boyfriend or the kind of mother-daughter relationship, but actually being able to see these things that we've talked about in yourself is probably more important, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah. Both as the carer and as the person who's kind of going through the eating disorder, because actually as the carer who often kind of neglects their own well-being in the process because they're so intent on fixing or not fixing the other person, that actually if you can apply these same kind of principles almost to yourself, then you're going to be in such a kind of a stronger position to then help the other person. It's like you always say that when you're on the aeroplane about to take off and they're giving all the safety instructions, that they always tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before you put on the other person, even if it's a small child.
Yeah.
And that's such an important message just for general life. Like if you're not looking after your own well-being, then you can't possibly kind of help the other person to the kind of the full kind of capacity that you could. And
it's almost like if I had been looking after myself, then in some way that automatically gives Bea permission to do the same for herself. Or at least because I'm modelling that kind of good behaviour, if you like, of self-care, which is overused phrase, but it's true to look after ourselves. And there's a quote that we've written in the book that we were just looking over now, which I absolutely love, and I'd love to share it with you here. And it's by somebody called Kurt Blackson, and he says, "Love is the secret ingredient. It's the ultimate superfood." And, you know, that kind of rounds it off, really. And what we're saying is love is at the heart of relationships, whether that's with yourself or with somebody else. And I think knowing that has certainly helped me.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah.
We hope you found this useful. Please do comment below with any kind of thoughts, reflections or questions. And yeah, we'll see you soon.